Hey everyone, Rick here, and folks, welcome back to another unit review for Battlefields of Mana. And we're getting right down to it. We are nearing the point where we have covered every core figure and unit in the entire list of different possibilities, because now we're talking about sorcerers. So, a sorcerer is an optional way to play. If you want to experience the full game, you and your opponent absolutely include sorcerers in your army. As you can see from the cost, we're kind of skipping ahead here. There is no cost. You either both play with sorcerers or you don't. They're simply too powerful. So here is how it works. We have both a foot and a mounted pose. We also have both men and women. You may want a sorceress instead of a sorcerer. And you can do it both foot and mounted, like I mentioned. Depending on the unit type, you may or may not want to attach your sorcerer to. So let's actually take a peek at that right now. Those are just a few of the different examples. These were Lunar Knight, the Lunar Knight Sorcerer. Very cool figure. It's actually Leonardo da Vinci, both foot and mounted. But I love it because he looks like a sorcerer and he's holding some scrolls. And then for the Regal Guard, of course, the more colorful Renaissance look to them. So that is a mounted sorcerer. Here is a foot sorceress. Very cool looking fig. All right, so, and of course we have the different stat cards. So that was the Lunar Knight Sorcerer. Here is the Regal Guard Sorcerer. And I have different figures as well. So if you didn't like the Leonardo da Vinci pose, or if you wanted a male on foot sorcerer, I have tons of different 15 millimeter sorcerer figures, both foot and mounted. All right, so here, let's say you wanted to, and we talked about this kind of with a unit commander, you cannot move unit commanders between units. They're stuck on the unit they're assigned to at the beginning of the game. Sorcerers are considered single figures that can act independently on their own. They can move on their own. You can deploy them at the beginning of the battle attached to a unit. You can deploy them individually. You can deploy them mounted, and then during the course of the game, move into contact with a friendly unit is all you have to do, and they take the form of the unit they're attached to. So in this case, attaching a sorcerer to a foot unit, even if he was mounted when he moved into contact with them, he is now on foot like the rest of the unit. If he were on foot and he moved into contact with a mounted unit, you would grab your mounted pose. That's why you need both foot and mounted poses, so that you can swap out. They're always considered to have, a squire or something nearby that's holding the reins of the horse or whatever. You can make up in your mind how you justify it, but it always takes the footprint of the unit it's attached to. Single figures are always assigned to the front rank. If you have more single figures in the front rank than you do have spaces, then they start moving into the back rank. You never replace the center banner bearer, however. And then any replaced units just get stuck in the back like that. And of course, they can be put to either side. If they get attacked in the flank, you can shuffle them down here. In fact, it's not an option. You have to. You always have to maximize the number of figures in contact. So, let's start talking about the stats. There's a lot to discuss. I'll try to go quick. Attack dice, 2. Normally, you're going to be casting spells with the sorcerer, but let's just say you were he was attacking in melee. You just wanted to attack back in melee. He attacks with 2 dice, whether he's attacking close combat or at range. He has no special combat strength modifiers, just for his normal attacks. You can imagine maybe in melee, he's whipping up some kind of basic spell, or at range, he's just shooting a basic fireball out of his hand, nothing too crazy. Armor value 2, so it takes 3s or better to hit him. Again, if he's on his own, you can target him with range, whatever you want, but if he's in a unit, he can't be singled out in a ranged attack. He can be singled out in a close combat attack, however, either way, whether he was by himself or in a unit. So in order to hit him, 3s or better. He does have a defensive special ability. You can imagine, he kind of has this aura around him at all times. He gets +1 to all his defense dice. Range is 12. His Range is 12 inches. Movement is 4 on foot or 6 if mounted. And that's important because if he was mounted and he joined a unit of heavy cavalry, you always move the slower of the unit combat profile. So heavy cavalry only move 5 inches per movement action. So even though he has a 6-inch movement, if he was attached to a unit of heavy cavalry, he'd only be moving 5 with the rest of the unit. Or 3 inches on foot if he was attached to a unit of axemen who only move 3. But, archers have a movement of 4, so he can keep up with them with a movement of 4. Initiative is +5. He is a leader, just like a unit commander, just like a warlord, which we'll talk about later. He has a huge initiative bonus. Any unit that he's attached to benefits from that initiative bonus. Health is 10. I typically use these little tiny 10-sided dice, which I absolutely love. Stick that like in the back of the unit. That tells you that's how much HP he has every time he takes some hits. Just turn that down. Keeps track of how much health he has. And I love that. So 10 health. He doesn't cost anything. And then ability. Cavalry with an asterisk because he will have the cavalry ability if he is mounted. Cavalry again gives him a +1 bonus in melee when fighting non-polearm infantry. That's whether he's on his own or in a cavalry unit. And then the magic special ability is where it all happens. So if you and your opponent are using sorcerers, there is a magic phase. In Battlefields of Mana, it goes movement phase, magic phase, range attack phase, close combat phase. If you're not using sorcerers, you just skip the magic phase. But if you are engaged in a magic, if you are using sorcerers in your game, you will engage in the magic phase. And the way that works is twofold. First is an optional Arcane Duel. So an Arcane Duel is optional for the current active player. So in a round, one player will go, then the next player will go. Next round, repeat the process. One player, then the other player. They complete all 4 phases of a turn, and then the next player takes their 4 phases of the turn. So the active player on their magic phase decides, do I want to engage in an Arcane Duel or not? If they say they don't want to, then they move on to Spellcasting. If they do want to engage in an Arcane Duel, this is how it works. There are 3 4-sided dice. Blue for water, green for earth, red for fire. 4 elements. Rock, paper, scissors mechanism. Fire beats earth, water beats fire, earth beats water. You take one, in secret, one of the elements. Your opponent does the same. You simultaneously roll them and consult a chart. I wonder if I can actually fit this on camera. Let's see. As you can see, here are the results. This is from the perspective of the active player, but it works either way. So if you have the higher color and higher number, 2 wounds on the opposing sorcerer. If you had a lower color but higher number, no effect. Lower color, even number, 1 wound on your own sorcerer. So as you can see, it's a rock, paper, scissors style situation with 2 variables, and the results end up wounding. So what is the point of an Arcane Duel? Well, as you may expect, sorcerers are so powerful that you're probably not going to want to rush them up in the middle of a melee. You're probably going to keep them back, casting support spells, maybe the occasional offensive spell, but it may be hard to ever get to your opposing sorcerer. So this is a way where you could potentially start chipping away at them if they are turtling way on the back edge of the battlefield. If they're turtling and you're like, you know what, let's start arcane dueling. I want to start wounding you, what have you. So Arcane Duel, rock, paper, scissors, 3d4s, and consult the chart. Then it is time for the spellcasting portion of the magic phase, during which you roll for mana. Typically, it's 1d4. You roll that, you collect that many mana crystals, which will look like this, and you can save them from turn to turn or spend them or whatever you want to do. And on your turn, you can spend as many mana crystals as you want to cast a whole variety of spells. There's no way I'm going to be able to fit this whole list on the camera, but a couple of spells include Enchant. It costs 2 mana crystals. And again, if you had 4, 6, 8 mana crystals, you could enchant 2, 3, 4 times. Or maybe cast an enchantment and another spell, or any combination. Enchant gives one of these custom enchant tokens, which are gorgeous, that I had designed by Litco. And within, again, 12-inch range, 12 inches, and line of sight varies depending on the spell. Some spells require it, some spells don't. Some spells cannot be used if he's engaged in close combat. Some spells can still be used if he's engaged. Just like shooting, like this archer unit, if it moved 4 inches and then it could still shoot, the sorcerer can move once and still cast a spell. But if he moves twice, he cannot cast a spell. However, he can still channel mana, which is what rolling a d4 is. I said mostly 1d4, but there are ways you could channel 2d4 mana in a single turn. That would be huge. But either way, if you spent 2 mana, cast an enchantment, you can cast that on any friendly unit or single figure. And you will place the enchantment token next to the unit. A unit can have as many enchant tokens as you want. You spend these enchant tokens to reroll dice. You can reroll attack dice, defense dice, even initiative dice. If you really need to go first and you roll poorly, you can spend your enchant token to reroll your initiative die. Other spells include slowing your opponent down, permanently reduces the targeted unit or single figure's movement in half for the rest of the game. Restore, costs 4 mana, allows the sorcerer to heal you d4 HP. That's mostly used on, figures that have more than 2 HP like a typical unit has. A shield is so cool. 4 mana, you roll a d4. These are little tiny d4s. Oh, 4. And then you stick that on the unit that you cast a shield on. And now any attacks against that unit at range, at close combat, they chip away at that shield value first before they hit the rest of the unit. Divine Strength, you can increase the result of die rolls by d3. Necromance, for 8 mana, you can summon a unit that looks like this of 6 figures of skeletons. So I have skeleton figures. You can cast for 8 mana, summon a 6-figure unit of skeletons. They have the combat profile of Peasant Militia, but with polearm. And then Pyrostorm is the one that I use probably the most often. It costs for mana varies. It can cost anywhere from 1 to as many mana as you want. What it does is you get to, it's basically a ranged attack with that many dice. For every mana you spend, you get to roll that many d6. Now Pyrostorm is pretty incredible because all those dice are all +1. Cover terrain has no impact. Armor value of the target is reduced to 1. No defensive special abilities may be applied. So it's a hugely powerful ranged attack. Again, 12 inches. And you spend as many mana. So the more mana you spend, the more dice you get to roll. And I think that basically sums up most of the spells. But yeah, so there's a whole list of spells that the sorcerer can cast. Again, channeling, arcane dueling, getting all this mana, casting these spells with these cool, unique little tokens, keeping track of his own health with this cool little die. He can be on his own mounted, just shooting across the battlefield and casting, shield over here and shooting a Pyrostorm blast over here because he can cast as many spells as he has mana in a turn. Or maybe you stick him in a unit so he can't be singled out. People can shoot him or cast a catapult. Catapults love trying to single out. If he's by himself, you can single him out with a catapult shot. But if he's in a unit, you can target the unit, but the unit takes the hits before he does. So yeah, there's just, oh my gosh, I just absolutely love it. That is the concept of sorcerers in Battlefields of Mana, folks. Thank you all so much for watching. I do truly appreciate it. And until next time.